In the name of the beloved Son, for the sake of the beloved community. Amen. It is still Christmas. Granted, the commercial world was done with Christmas at about 11:59 on the 25th and threw it away with the old ripped-off wrapping paper and moved on to the post-Christmas, New Year's, pre-Valentine's Day sales. But we're still in Christmas as a church, still thinking about the incarnation and what it means. Today, we have John's take on the incarnation. Quite different from Luke's take. In John's take, we have no angels, no shepherds, no "O little town of Bethlehem," no manger, no inn, not a Mary or Joseph in sight. But we do have a story. It is John's story. And it's a story that begins big. John is dealing with the big themes: life, light, God, and everything. It's a huge story. John's story takes us, well, to infinity and beyond, if I may borrow a line from Toy Story. Or if you're not a Toy Story fan, well, how about the words of our own Book of Common Prayer? John's story takes us to the vast expanse of interstellar space, galaxies, suns, the planets and their courses, and this fragile Earth, our island home. John's story is big, but then comes verse 14, the turning point. John says that the Word, all of this, became flesh and came here. Everything up there came down here. The Word, through whom everything was made, would now learn how to make a chair. The Word, in whom life came into being, would now march to death on a cross. The Word, the one that shines in the darkness so that nobody can even look fully on it, would now become human so that you and I could see, hear, and touch the very face of God. John says, that Word became flesh and came here, but not for long. John's word for to dwell among us literally means to pitch a tent, to stay for just a short time, to camp out. And actually, when you look at Jesus, it was a short time. His life was only 33 years. The ministry, the stories, the healings, the teachings, about 36 months. And yet, that short period of time changed the world. The world has never been the same since those mere 33 years. It was a short time. But while he was here, John says, we saw his glory. Who was the we who saw his glory? Was it the famous? No. It was the fishermen. It was people like James and John, everyday folk who went about their everyday lives, struggling to make ends meet, trying to keep family together. Not much different from us. They saw his glory. Who were the we who saw his glory? Was it those who were living in the fine palaces and the big houses? It was not. It was farmers, people who dug in the ground, got their hands dirty. Those to whom Jesus would tell stories about seed time and harvest. He would tell them stories about wheat and weeds and mustard seeds. They were the ones who saw his glory. Was it the religiously well-connected? No, it wasn't. It wasn't the people with titles in front of their names or wearing fancy robes. Or an aside here, know that whenever preaching is happening, that it is for the entire congregation. That includes the preacher. Always know that if something is landing on you, it's landing on me too. Now, where was I? Ah, yes, people in long robes. It was not the religiously well-connected. It was actually the religiously relegated. The people who were pushed away by the religious. It was people like the lepers whose disease kept them from being able to come to the temple through no fault of their own. Who saw his glory? It was the Samaritans, people who were shoved away simply because of who their parents were. They were considered people whose religion was wrong, and they didn't know where to worship God. They didn't have the full revelation of God. They were people to be looked down upon, but they beheld his glory. The lame, who couldn't walk to the temple, who people strolled by and maybe threw an occasional coin to, they beheld his glory. Was it the politically powerful? It was not. It was the politically disenfranchised. People with views as different as Matthew and Simon. What made their political views different? Well, one of them, Matthew, was a Roman collaborator. He said, well, the occupiers are here, they've got the power, so I'm just going to kowtow to them and I'll do what they say and maybe make some money on the side. Then there was another man named Simon. He was, I guess if you put him in the words of our day and age, you would have to say he was a would-be terrorist. He believed in the violent overthrow of the Roman government and was ready to put his life on the line for that. Yet, both of these men ended up followers of Jesus. They saw his glory and they were changed by what they saw. Who saw his glory? The men of power? No. It was the women along the way. It was women like the one who came to Jesus one day, brokenhearted about her life, crying, using her very tears to wipe his feet. It was women like the one who was caught in adultery, who was being condemned, whom Jesus rescued with a sentence. It was women like the one who came to the well in the middle of the day. She couldn't come at the start of the day when the community would normally gather. She came late because she was an outcast from her community. The things that she had done had made her the talk of the town, and not in the good way. But she saw his glory and ended up announcing him as the Savior of the world. It was women like one whom the scriptures tell us had 7 unclean spirits, and Jesus drove them out. She actually became the first person to announce the resurrection of Jesus. Yes. Mary Magdalene. Do you see the pattern here? Those that see his glory are the ones who are not blinded by their own glory. Those who see his glory are the ones who have looked at the world and cried out for mercy and justice. Those who see his glory are the ones who are not so stuck in the mirror of self-centeredness that they can't pull their eyes away and see self-sacrificing love in the face of Jesus. They are the we who see his glory. And here's the good news of the day. They aren't alone. It wasn't only them. Not just the ones who happened to be living in that part of the planet during those 33 years. The glory of Jesus can still be seen. Even now, 2,000 years later, the glory of Jesus is seen in the stories and the teachings that have come down to us 2,000 years later. The glory of Jesus is still experienced by those who come here, stretching out arms, making a manger of our hands to receive the Word made flesh. The glory of Jesus is still seen. God be praised, even in us who struggle to follow him, even in our fallen ways. Still, somehow or other, the glory of Jesus shines even in us, and people are able to see it. This is the good news, that the incarnation was not just something back then. It's something continuing to our day and age. And so on this Sunday, I would just urge you, meditate on the mystery of the Word made flesh. Gaze full on into the glory of Jesus. Let your life be led by grace and truth. Oh, and one more thing. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.